Imagine this. The sun sinks below the horizon, plunging the Ice Age world into freezing darkness. Inside a dimly lit cave, the fire crackles. Shadows dance across stone walls, and a group of early humans prepares for the long night ahead. But what did they really do once the sun went down? Was it only sleep and survival, or something far more fascinating? The Ice Age night was unforgiving. Once the sun slipped behind the jagged horizon, temperatures plunged, winds howled, and predators stirred in the darkness. For our ancestors, this was the most dangerous time of the day. Their survival depended on one skill above all others: the ability to make and maintain fire. Picture a small group of early humans huddled around a pile of dry twigs and moss. One figure kneels forward, striking flint against stone with practiced precision. Sparks scatter into the darkness, tiny bursts of hope in an otherwise hostile world. When a spark finally catches, glowing in the dry moss, everyone leans closer, shielding it with their hands against the wind. Within moments, flames lick upward, and the fire roars to life. Relief washes over the group. For them, this wasn't just about comfort, it was survival. Welcome to Before Flame. If you enjoyed traveling back in time with me, don't forget to hit like and subscribe so you never miss the next journey into our ancient past. Now, I'd love to hear from you. Tell me in the comments, where are you watching from, and what time is it right now? It'll make me so happy to see our community connecting from all around the world. And most importantly, if this video make you just imagine the Stone Age or actually feel what it was like to live as a caveman or cavewoman, share your thoughts below. I'm excited to read them all. Fire was far more than heat. It was the invisible boundary between safety and danger. Without it, cold seeped into bones, hunger gnawed, and predators like wolves or cave lions crept ever closer. With fire, however, cavemen had warmth, light, and a weapon that nature itself feared. The night, once terrifying, became a little more manageable, but making fire was no easy task. In icy conditions, dry wood was rare, moss was damp, and winds could snuff out sparks in seconds. Early humans developed remarkable skill in choosing the right kindling and understanding airflow. They became experts in their local environment, knowing which trees produced the driest bark, where moss grew in sheltered crevices, and how to carry embers from one place to another without losing them. For a community, firemaking wasn't optional. It was a daily ritual, one of the first lessons taught to children by elders. Once the flames caught, the real work began, maintaining it through the night. Fires had to be fed steadily with wood and protected from wind. Too much fuel and the cave filled with smoke. Too little and the fire dwindled, leaving everyone vulnerable. This balancing act demanded teamwork. Often, members of the group took turns keeping watch, stoking the flames, and ensuring that embers glowed until morning. The rhythm of feeding the fire became part of their nightly routine, a heartbeat of survival. Yet fire was more than survival. It was symbolic. The glow of flames marked the boundary of human space. Inside its circle of light, there was warmth, food, and community. Outside, there was darkness, danger, and the unknown. This invisible line shaped the psychology of cavemen. It gave them a sense of control in an unpredictable world. It told them, "Here, you are safe." Modern science even supports what they instinctively knew. Staring into fire has a calming, almost hypnotic effect. The flickering light relaxes the nervous system, lowers stress, and signals the body that it's time to rest. For Ice Age humans, fire not only kept predators at bay, but also eased their minds enough to drift into sleep, a state otherwise too risky in the wilderness. Think about it. We live with electric heaters, lamps, and digital devices, yet we often sleep poorly. Meanwhile, cave people with nothing but fire found warmth, safety, and even a sense of peace in the most hostile environments on Earth. As the flames stabilized and the crackling sound filled the cave, the group's world shifted. Fire was no longer just survival. It became comfort, protection, and connection. In the Ice Age, when nights could reach bone-cracking cold, this circle of warmth meant the difference between life and death. Imagine the bitter air outside, sharp as knives, pressing against stone walls. Inside, the fire's heat radiated outward, softening the sting of winter. cavemen instinctively knew how to position themselves around it. Those closest soaked in direct warmth, while others layered themselves with animal furs, creating a balance that allowed everyone to rest. This wasn't random, it was strategy, an early form of thermal engineering. By placing bodies, hides, and embers in just the right configuration, they crafted a microclimate, a small bubble of comfort in a world of frost and snow. But warmth wasn't fire's only gift. The glow itself carried power. For predators lurking, in the shadows, wolves, saber-toothed cats, and even scavenging hyenas, the sight and smell of fire meant danger. Animals avoided its reach, giving cavemen a perimeter of safety. This invisible shield was priceless. To fall asleep in the wild was to be vulnerable. Yet, with fire burning steadily, early humans had a guard that never tired, never blinked, and never wandered. Protection, however, wasn't only physical, it was deeply psychological. The constant fear of attack, of freezing, of being unprepared could fray the nerves of anyone. Fire changed that. Its flickering glow painted the cave, walls with moving shadows, creating familiar, almost comforting patterns. These visual cues soothed the mind, signaling safety and routine. In modern terms, fire was their version of a nightlight, a signal to the brain. It's okay. You can rest now. Beyond warmth and safety, fire became the heart of community life. Cavemen didn't simply sit in silence, they gathered. Around the flames, stories were told, experiences shared, and bonds strengthened. Elders passed down survival knowledge, where to find food, how to track animals, how to read the stars, while children listened, wide-eyed, soaking in wisdom that ensured the group's continuity. In many ways, this was humanity's first classroom. Fire also transformed meals. Raw meat, tough and risky to consume, became tender and nourishing when cooked. This change wasn't just about taste. It made food easier to digest, releasing more energy for the body to survive cold nights. A warm, hearty meal before sleep allowed cavemen to conserve energy and sleep more deeply. Even the aroma of cooking became a ritual, a sensory cue that the day's labor was over and rest was near. And then there was sound. The fire's crackling was more than background noise. It was nature's lullaby. The rhythmic pops and hisses echoed through the cave, masking harsher sounds from outside. The wind's howl, the growl of predators, the snapping of branches. These harsh noises could trigger fear or startle the group awake. But the steady hum of fire softened those edges, creating a natural soundscape that calmed the senses. So fire wasn't just a tool, it was the centerpiece of Ice Age life at night. Source of heat, a guardian against predators, a beacon of community and a psychological anchor. With it, sleep was no longer a gamble. It became restorative, strengthening both body and spirit for the next day's challenges. When you think about it, our modern gatherings around campfires, fireplaces, or even candlelit dinners still echo this primal instinct. Fire continues to draw us together, calm us, and remind us of safety in the dark. The roots of that connection go all the way back to those Ice Age caves. As the fire burned into the night, it became more than warmth or protection. It grew into a symbol, something that shaped the psychology of early humans. Fire didn't just keep cavemen alive, it gave their nights meaning. Think about the contrast. Outside the cave, darkness was absolute. No streetlights, no lamps, no glowing phones. Only moonlight and stars. The blackness beyond the cave mouth represented uncertainty, hidden dangers, freezing air, the unknown. But inside, fire transformed that darkness into something manageable. Its glow carved out a small island of light, a boundary between chaos and order. For the caveman mind, that flickering circle of illumination wasn't just physical safety, it was psychological reassurance. Fire became a kind of rhythm for life. When the flames were strong, the group felt strong. When embers dimmed, anxiety crept in. Keeping the fire alive wasn't only about survival, it was about hope. Every log added, every spark coaxed into flame, reinforced a sense of control in a world where so much was uncontrollable. Imagine how empowering that must have felt in the Ice Age, to bend nature to your will, to create light where there was only shadow. There's also the storytelling. Around the flames, cavemen weren't just recounting hunts or dangers. They were shaping identity. Stories gave meaning to struggle, created heroes, and explained mysteries. In many ways, this was the birth of culture itself. The flickering firelight played a role too. Shadows danced on the cave walls, transforming into shapes and figures that fueled imagination. For children, this might have been their first glimpse of myth. For adults, it reinforced shared memory and purpose. The cave walls themselves, with paintings etched in ochre and charcoal, may have come alive under firelight, turning static drawings into moving, living narratives. Then, there's the psychological cue of fire as transition. Just as modern people might unwind by dimming lights or scrolling on a phone before bed, cavemen had fire. Sitting near its glow, watching flames shrink to embers, acted as a signal to the brain. It's time to slow down, to rest. The warmth on skin, the hypnotic movement of flames, the lowering of voices, it all created a ritual of winding down. This wasn't random. It was instinctive sleep hygiene, thousands of years before anyone coined the term. Symbolically, fire also created hierarchy and responsibility. Someone had to tend it, someone had to guard it. The act of maintaining flames at night gave meaning to roles within the group. A young member trusted to keep embers alive until dawn. Wasn't just doing a task, they were proving their reliability, their worth to the community. Fire in this sense was not only physical energy, but social energy. Even spirituality likely tied to fire. The glow of flames was mysterious, alive, but not alive. It consumed, yet it gave. For many, it might have felt like a gift from unseen forces. Archaeological evidence shows rituals around fire, suggesting it wasn't purely practical. It was sacred. In that dim light, surrounded by flickering shadows, the line between physical survival and spiritual reflection blurred. And at the heart of it all, sleep. Fire provided the conditions to let go of vigilance. Without it, the brain stayed on high alert, listening for every snap, sniff, or rustle outside. With it, trust returned. Muscles relaxed, breathing deepened, and the body entered restorative cycles. Fire created not just safety but peace, a peace rare in the brutal Ice Age. In short, fire at night wasn't just fuel. It was identity, ritual, community, and psychology rolled into one. It was the heartbeat of the group, keeping fear at bay, giving rise to stories and guiding the body into the gift of sleep. Without fire, the nights were endless and terrifying. With fire, they became a sanctuary. When the sun set in the prehistoric world, so did human activity. Cavemen lived in an environment untouched by artificial light, where the rising and setting of the sun dictated every rhythm of existence. Their lives were guided not by clocks, alarms, or late-night schedules, but by the natural cycle of light and dark. This alignment with the sun created what we now call circadian rhythms, the body's internal clock that regulates sleep, energy, hormones, and even mood. Today, many of us struggle with disrupted sleep because of screens, artificial lighting, or irregular schedules. But for cavemen, these rhythms were unbroken. Their biology and environment worked in harmony. Imagine a summer evening in the icy age. The sun lingers longer, casting golden light across valleys. Cavemen used this extended daylight for gathering, repairing tools, and preparing food. By the time dusk arrives, their bodies have already begun producing melatonin, the hormone that signals sleep. Without competing artificial light, their brains interpret the fading glow as the clearest possible cue. It's time to slow down. Sleep comes naturally, effortlessly. Now picture a winter night. Days are short, darkness comes early, and cold presses in. Instead of resisting this change, cavemen leaned into it. Longer nights meant longer sleep. This wasn't laziness, it was survival. Conserving energy during harsh, food-scarce winters was crucial. Their bodies adapted seasonally, stretching rest when necessary, shortening it when daylight demanded productivity. It was a fluid, responsive way of living, something modern people rarely experience, because we try to hold the same routine year-round. What's fascinating is how this rhythm didn't just affect sleep, it influenced every system. Hormones that govern appetite, reproduction, and alertness synced with light-dark cycles. Early morning sun exposure boosted serotonin, making them alert and ready for action. Evening darkness promoted melatonin, calming their nervous systems. This daily balance meant cavemen didn't struggle with insomnia or jet lag the way we do today. Their bodies weren't fighting their environment. They were tuned to it. Even moonlight played a role. On full moon nights, caves and valleys glowed brighter. This allowed extended activity, sometimes hunting, sometimes social gatherings. It gave variety to their rhythms, but still within the framework of natural light. Instead of being disruptive, these lunar shifts became part of the cycle, adding subtle layers to their patterns of rest and wakefulness. The absence of blue light from screens also mattered more than we realize. Today, phones, TVs, and LEDs emit light that tricks our brains into thinking it's daytime, even at midnight. Cavemen had no such interference. Their only nighttime light was fire, which emits a warm orange glow. Modern science confirms that this kind of light doesn't suppress melatonin as harshly as blue light does. In essence, their evening firelight prepared them for rest, while our glowing screens sabotage it. This deep integration with natural cycles gave cavemen's sleep a restorative power we often envy today. They weren't fighting insomnia, staying up too late, or dragging themselves awake with caffeine. Instead, their energy followed a predictable arc: alert at sunrise, winding down at sunset, deeply asleep at night. This stability wasn't just healthier, it was essential for survival. A hunter with dulled reflexes or a gatherer too tired to focus could mean disaster for the group. Rest was survival, and circadian alignment ensured they got it. By living with the sun and moon, cavemen achieved what modern humans are now desperately trying to recreate with blackout curtains, sleep apps, and melatonin supplements. For them, it wasn't a struggle, it was life itself. For modern humans, sleep is often something we try to standardize: go to bed at the same time, wake up at the same time, regardless of season. Cavemen, on the other hand, didn't force their bodies into fixed patterns. Instead, their rest mirrored the seasons, flexible, adaptive, and perfectly aligned with survival needs. In winter, the world was harsher. Shorter days, freezing nights, and limited food meant conserving energy became critical. Cavemen slept longer during these months, often extending their rest to match the longer nights. Think of it almost like a human version of semi-hibernation. By sleeping more, they reduced the calories burned while awake, saving precious reserves for when they truly needed energy. Sleep was more than rest. It was a survival strategy. Contrast that with summer. Long days meant more sunlight, more available food, and more activity. Cavemen shortened their sleep naturally to fit these conditions, rising earlier, staying active later, and making the most of extended daylight hours was not just convenient, it was essential for gathering and storing enough food to last through the tougher seasons. Their bodies and routines shifted fluidly, in sync with nature's cycles. What's remarkable is how instinctively they achieved what we now call seasonal rhythm adjustment. Modern science has shown that our circadian clock subtly shifts throughout the year, but artificial schedules keep us locked into rigid routines. Cavemen embraced these shifts. Longer nights meant more melatonin and rest. Longer days meant more serotonin, activity, and alertness. Their bodies adapted seamlessly, without the anxiety of trying to force 8 hours a night regardless of season. Temperature played a huge role too. Winter nights were brutally cold, and keeping warm while sleeping required creativity. Cavemen piled layers of animal furs, huddled close together, and kept fires burning strategically to hold in heat. This wasn't just about comfort, it was about survival. Maintaining a stable body temperature during sleep is vital for deep restorative rest. Even minor drops can disrupt cycles. Cavemen mastered this balance, creating microclimates inside their shelters. Summer brought the opposite problem: overheating. Instead of heavy furs, lighter coverings, or sleeping near cave entrances where cooler air flowed became the solution. Sometimes groups even slept outdoors when nights were mild, allowing breezes and open air to regulate temperature. This adaptability kept their bodies aligned with the seasons, something we often resist today with air conditioners and heaters, trying to create artificial consistency. Food availability also influenced sleep patterns. In winter, when hunting was riskier and food scarcer, conserving energy through longer sleep made sense. In summer, abundant resources meant more time awake, gathering and storing while conditions were favorable. Sleep wasn't seen as a rigid number of hours. It was a flexible tool shaped by survival, resources, and climate. This seasonal approach gave cavemen an evolutionary advantage. By adjusting their rhythms, they reduced physical strain, maximized efficiency, and ensured the group's survival. Imagine the alternative: trying to maintain summer levels of activity in the middle of an ice age winter. The result would have been exhaustion, starvation, or worse. Their instinct to sleep with the seasons kept them alive. What's truly fascinating is how this natural adaptability is still within us. Modern research shows that people tend to sleep longer in winter months and shorter in summer, even today. But artificial light, fixed work schedules, and urban living often suppress these natural tendencies. Cavemen, free from those pressures, leaned fully into them. In a sense, their seasonal sleep patterns were like a dialogue with the earth itself. The shifting length of days, the bite of cold, the abundance of summer, all of it shaped how they rested. Their ability to listen to these cues rather than fight them made their sleep not just restorative, but deeply efficient for survival. When the sun disappeared and darkness swallowed the Ice Age landscape, cavemen didn't see it as the end of the day. They saw it as the beginning of a sacred nightly ritual. Night was dangerous, unpredictable, and filled with unseen threats, but it was also a time for bonding, reflection, and preparation for deep, restorative sleep. And at the very heart of it all was fire. Fire wasn't just a survival tool, it was a companion. The warm glow of flames carved a circle of safety in the vast, intimidating dark. The flicker of light reduced anxiety, signaling to the nervous system that predators would likely stay away. Modern science tells us that warm, low light stimulates melatonin and eases the body into sleep. Cavemen lived this truth every night, gathering close to the hypnotic rhythm of crackling embers, letting the fire lull them into restfulness. The tie. Contrast between firelight and complete darkness also played a crucial role. Inside caves, shadows danced on stone walls, weaving patterns that gave the brain something familiar to focus on. Outside, however, the void of night was total. No street lamps, no city glow, only moonlight and stars. This sharp separation of day, firelit evening, and total darkness reinforced circadian rhythms, sending a clear signal. It's time to rest. But before sleep came ritual. Cavemen didn't simply collapse into unconsciousness. They followed routines that eased the transition from survival mode to rest mode. Bedding was arranged, furs piled, hides shaken out, moss adjusted for comfort. Fire was tended, ensuring embers would last until morning. These tasks may seem mundane, but they worked as pre-sleep cues, what we today would call sleep hygiene. The repetition reassured the mind, quieting lingering stress. Social rituals were just as important. Stories were told, lessons from the day, myths explaining the stars, or warnings about predators. These moments weren't just entertainment. They were a way of transferring knowledge across generations while creating emotional closeness. This bond reduced fear, making individuals feel safer as they drifted into vulnerable sleep. For children especially, falling asleep to the voices of elders and the glow of fire created a sense of belonging that modern sleep scientists recognize as vital to reducing nighttime anxiety. Silence too became a kind of ritual. Once the fire settled and conversations faded, the night was embraced for its stillness. Only natural sounds, wind, crackling wood, distant howls remained. Yet instead of being disruptive, these sounds often acted like a natural lullaby, cues that the environment was as it should be. If anything unusual broke the pattern, a sudden rustle, a predator's growl, the group would wake. But otherwise, nature's rhythms worked hand in hand with their own. Interestingly, cavemen often practiced a form of segmented sleep, a pattern where sleep came in two main phases, with a period of wakefulness in between. During this midnight interval, fire might be stoked, food eaten, or quiet conversations shared. This wasn't seen as insomnia, it was natural. By splitting rest into phases, cavemen stayed warmer, maintained fire safety, and still reaped the benefits of deep, restorative cycles. Modern humans with rigid 8-hour schedules often see segmented sleep as abnormal, when in fact it was once the norm. Rituals also included positioning. Where one slept mattered. Experienced hunters or protectors often lay near the cave entrance, guarding the group. Mothers with children nestled in the warmest, most protected spots. Elders, respected for their wisdom, were placed where they could remain comfortable. This arrangement wasn't random. It was deliberate, another layer of nighttime security that allowed everyone to rest easier. By the time the last embers glowed and bodies settled under heavy furs, the cave wasn't just a shelter. It was a sanctuary. Firelight gave way to darkness, rituals gave way to silence, and sleep became more than biological necessity. It was a carefully orchestrated system. Warmth, safety, bonding, and renewal, all blending into one nightly cycle of survival and restoration. Modern humans often struggle to shut down at night, distracted by screens, schedules, and stress. Cavemen, without such interference, naturally built rituals that signaled to their minds and bodies, "It is safe, it is time, you may rest now." When the icy winds howled outside the cave and temperatures plunged below freezing, no amount of fur or fire could keep a body warm without fuel. For cavemen, food wasn't just about survival, it was the foundation of sleep itself. What they ate, when they ate, and how they prepared their meals directly influenced the quality of their rest. In fact, nutrition may have been the single greatest factor separating their deep, restorative sleep from the restless tossing and turning that so many modern humans endure. Unlike today's abundance, food in the Ice Age was scarce and seasonal. Every meal was the result of strategy, effort, and cooperation. Hunting a mammoth or trapping smaller game was about more than filling bellies. It was about ensuring the body had the energy reserves to endure long, freezing nights. Without adequate calories, cavemen risked shivering through the dark hours, their sleep constantly broken by cold and hunger. The secret weapon: fat. High-fat, calorie-dense foods were the gold standard of Ice Age nutrition. Fatty cuts of meat, bone marrow, and preserved animal fat were prized because they provided long-lasting energy. Unlike carbohydrates, which burn quickly, fat releases energy slowly, keeping the body warm and stable for hours. For sleep, this was crucial. A body fueled with fat before bed maintained steady thermoregulation, preventing the chills that could jolt someone awake in the middle of the night. Protein, too, played a vital role. Consuming game meat provided amino acids essential for recovery and muscle repair, particularly important after long days of hunting and gathering. Sleep is when the body rebuilds itself, and protein-rich diets ensured cavemen could rise stronger the next morning. Combined with fat, these meals gave the perfect nutritional balance for deep, uninterrupted sleep. But timing was everything. Cavemen often ate their largest meals in the evening, once the day's hunting or foraging was complete. Gathering around the fire, they roasted meat, shared fatty marrow, and warmed themselves while eating. This evening feast wasn't just practical, it was strategic. Eating before sleep allowed the body to digest and release energy throughout the night, creating an internal heater that worked in tandem with fire and furs. Modern science now backs this up. Eating calorie-dense meals at night can improve thermoregulation and prevent nighttime wakefulness. Cavemen lived this truth instinctively. Food preservation also mattered. Hunting wasn't always successful, and winter often stretched resources thin. Drying or smoking meat provided backup reserves, ensuring the group could still eat, even on nights when the hunt failed. This foresight meant sleep was less likely to be disrupted by hunger or the stress of scarcity. With food secured and bellies full, the body could relax, knowing it had what it needed to restore itself overnight. Hydration, often overlooked, was equally important. In the Ice Age, water sources froze easily, and dehydration could impair sleep quality just as it does today. Cavemen warmed water by the fire or relied on snowmelt to maintain hydration. Drinking before sleep not only replenished fluids, but also improved circulation and temperature regulation, both essential for restful slumber. Nutrition was more than survival. It was a rhythm, a nightly ritual woven into the larger system of sleep. Eating by firelight signaled the end of the day's labors. The smell of roasting meat, the act of sharing food, the warmth spreading through the body, all of it primed the nervous system for rest. This was their natural version of winding down, far removed from modern late-night snacks in front of glowing screens. The brilliance of cavemen's nutrition lay not only in what they ate, but in how deeply it was integrated into their lifestyle. Meals weren't isolated events. They were anchors for community, security, and ultimately, the restorative sleep that determined survival. Every bite of fat, every sip of warm water, every marrow bone cracked open by firelight wasn't just nourishment. It was a step toward deep healing rest. If there's one thing that defined Ice Age life, it was uncertainty. Some days brought a successful hunt, while others meant returning to the cave empty-handed. In such a harsh environment, food wasn't just fuel, it was security. And when it came to sleep, nothing disrupted rest more than the gnawing ache of hunger or the anxiety of wondering whether tomorrow's meal would come at all. Cavemen solved this problem with foresight. Food preservation was as essential to survival as fire or shelter. Fresh kills couldn't simply be left to spoil, especially in the cold months when every calorie meant survival. Instead, they developed simple but effective preservation methods. Meat was dried over smoky fires, slowly losing moisture, while absorbing the protective compounds in wood smoke. This transformed it into a lightweight, long-lasting supply of protein and fat that could be stored for weeks. In colder climates, freezing itself became a preservation tool. Cavemen used natural ice and snow as early refrigeration, storing cuts of meat in pits or shaded areas where the cold kept them fresh. Fat rendered from animals could be stored in bone containers or animal skins, later used to cook or provide dense energy during lean periods. These strategies ensured that the group always had reserves to fall back on when hunting or foraging failed. This wasn't just about survival, it directly shaped their sleep. Imagine lying down in a cave, the wind howling outside, knowing you had no food left. Anxiety spikes, the body remains on alert, and sleep becomes shallow or fractured. By contrast, when preserved food was stacked nearby, cavemen could rest with peace of mind. Their bodies knew they were safe, fed, and secure. That psychological reassurance translated into deeper, more restorative rest. Scarcity, however, was a constant shadow. Long winters, illness, or unsuccessful hunts tested even the best prepared groups. In such times, cavemen turned to fallback foods, roots, nuts, and dried plants collected during warmer seasons. These weren't as calorie-dense as meat and fat, but they provided critical sustenance. The ability to diversify their diet, even in small ways, meant sleep wasn't completely disrupted by energy deficits. The body could still recover, albeit less efficiently, because some level of nutrition was maintained. Food storage also reduced the need for nighttime activity. Without reserves, cavemen might have been forced to scavenge or forage in dangerous conditions after dark. This not only risked encounters with predators, but also disrupted circadian rhythms, throwing off the body's natural rest cycle. Preserved supplies eliminated that risk, allowing nights to remain dedicated to rest and recovery. Another overlooked aspect was proximity. Preserved foods were often kept within the shelter itself, stacked in alcoves or sealed in animal hides. This wasn't just convenient, it minimized energy loss. In the freezing cold, every trip outside drained body heat and calories. By keeping food accessible, cavemen conserved energy and created a psychological association between the safety of the cave, nourishment, and rest. Modern humans might dismiss this as primitive survival, but science today tells a similar story. Food insecurity is a major stressor, disrupting sleep patterns and increasing anxiety. Cavemen understood this instinctively. Their preservation practices weren't just about extending calories, They were about ensuring peace of mind, allowing sleep to happen without constant worry about tomorrow's hunger. In many ways, preserved food was like a silent guardian of rest. Every strip of dried meat hanging by the fire, every cache of frozen fat tucked into snow, was a promise. Tonight, you can sleep. That promise gave cavemen the confidence to let go of vigilance, to drift into deep cycles of sleep that restored both body and mind for the challenges ahead. Preservation was more than a technique. It was a philosophy of preparation, one that turned uncertain tomorrows into secure nights. It created the mental and physical foundation for sleep, ensuring that rest was not a gamble but a nightly guarantee. Food in the Ice Age was more than survival fuel. It was community glue. For cavemen, eating was rarely a solitary act. Meals were shared experiences, rituals that did more than fill the belly. They fed the spirit, strengthened bonds, and set the stage for deep, restorative sleep. Imagine the scene. The day's hunt is over. Fire crackles in the center of a cave. Shadows flicker against the stone walls. Around the flames, men, women, and children gather, passing pieces of roasted meat, chewing roots or sipping hot broth made from marrow bones. The act of eating together wasn't just about calories, it was about connection. Modern science now confirms what our ancestors practiced instinctively. Communal eating reduces stress and fosters feelings of safety and belonging. Sharing food reassured cavemen that they weren't alone in the fight against the cold, the hunger, or the predators outside. That emotional security directly translated into better sleep. After all, who sleeps more soundly? A person alone in the dark, or someone nestled among trusted companions, bellies full and danger kept at bay by both fire and fellowship? The timing of meals also played a role. Evening feasts weren't rushed affairs, but natural transitions between the labors of the day and the rest of the night. The warmth of food, combined with the hypnotic rhythm of crackling flames, created a psychological wind-down routine not unlike the bedtime rituals we know today. Eating together became a collective signal. The day's work is done, the fire will guard us. Now it is time to rest. Food sharing also reinforced roles and responsibilities within the group. Hunters brought in game, gatherers contributed roots and berries, others prepared and distributed the meal. This shared labor created a sense of fairness and trust. No one went to sleep hungry while others feasted, because survival depended on cooperation. This reduced resentment, eased anxieties, and ensured that everyone, from the strongest hunter to the smallest child, entered the night with the same sense of security. There was also a psychological rhythm to storytelling during meals. As food was passed around, stories of the hunt, lessons from elders, or myths of ancestors were told. These narratives weren't mere entertainment. They reinforced cultural memory, provided guidance, and eased the mind. They gave structure to a chaotic, world-turning uncertainty into shared meaning. By the time the embers dimmed and bellies were full, the mind was calmer, primed for rest. Interestingly, the physical act of eating together may have had subtle biological effects. Sharing warmth near the fire, digesting high-calorie meals, and engaging in relaxed conversation likely stimulated the release of oxytocin, the bonding hormone. Elevated oxytocin levels reduce stress and promote feelings of safety, conditions that align perfectly with the onset of sleep. Cavemen didn't know the science, but they lived the effects: closeness, calmness, and comfort. Even resource scarcity strengthened this communal bond. During lean times, the decision to divide small portions equally built trust and solidarity. Knowing that others would share their last piece of dried meat or cached nuts meant individuals didn't lie awake worrying about starvation. The group became the safety net, and that collective security was the most powerful sleep aid of all. In the end, food for cavemen was never just about energy. It was about harmony. Each shared meal was a nightly ritual that nourished the body, soothed the mind, and reinforced the bonds that made survival possible. With firelight dancing on cave walls, the taste of roasted meat lingering, and familiar faces close by, cavemen could drift into the night's sleep, not just fed, but fulfilled. Their legacy reminds us of a timeless truth. Sleep is not just a biological necessity, it is a social one. In the Ice Age, it was food and fellowship together that laid the foundation for the kind of rest that sustained life in a brutal, frozen world. At night, cavemen weren't just huddling in darkness. They were strengthening the very foundations of survival. Fire wasn't only for warmth, it was a guardian against predators and a tool to create safety. Storytelling wasn't just entertainment, it was education, bonding, and the passing down of wisdom. Communal sleeping wasn't about space, it was about trust, shared responsibility, and collective security. Every action they took at night was purposeful, deeply tied to survival, connection, and balance with nature. In many ways, cavemen had a richer relationship with night than we do today. They used it to restore their bodies, sharpen their minds, and strengthen their communities. So when we compare our restless nights, glowing screens, and fragmented sleep to their rituals, one thing becomes clear. Cavemen weren't just surviving. The night, they were mastering it. And maybe, just maybe, their secrets can inspire us to rethink how we approach our own nights in the modern world.